All right, let's get started with today's deep dive. We're going to be looking at some UK diplomacy,
Yeah.
and specifically Prime Minister Keir Starmer,
Okay.
dealing with a pretty delicate situation
Yeah.
with former U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukraine's President Zelensky.
Okay.
So we've got excerpts from an article called UK Diplomacy, Trump, Zelensky, and Ukraine. And I've got my expert here
Right.
to help us kind of unpack all this.
Well, it's definitely a complex situation.
Yeah.
A lot of moving parts.
Yeah, so let's jump right in.
Okay.
This article talks about this fiery exchange between Trump and Zelensky
Oh yeah.
at the White House.
Right.
And Trump accused Zelensky of gambling with World War III.
Yeah, I remember that. That was pretty provocative, I think.
Yeah, it definitely got a lot of attention.
It did. John Swinney, Scotland's first minister,
Right.
called it deeply troubling.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because Zelensky went into this meeting
Yeah.
really hoping to secure a couple of things.
Yeah. Okay.
One was a minerals deal
Oh, okay.
and also potentially some security guarantees from the U.S.
Wow.
So you can imagine after that confrontation,
Yeah.
things didn't quite go as planned.
Yeah, no kidding. So that's pretty crazy. But despite all of that, Prime Minister Starmer offered Trump a second state visit.
Really?
Yeah.
That's pretty unusual, isn't it?
It is, yeah. For a second-term U.S. president, I mean, usually it's just like tea with the monarch or something.
Yeah, exactly.
Lunch or something like that.
Right, right. So that's pretty interesting that he would offer that right after this whole,
Well, it raises a lot of questions, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
Like, what was the thinking there?
Yeah.
Was it a genuine attempt at reconciliation? Was it strategic?
Right.
Or was it maybe a little of both?
Yeah, it's hard to know for sure.
It is, yeah.
I mean, it seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
Yeah.
Like you have this public disagreement and then you offer them a state visit.
Yeah.
Like, but maybe there's more to it than meets the eye.
Yeah, maybe there's a deeper strategy there.
Perhaps.
But not everybody was thrilled about this whole idea.
Yeah.
The article mentioned there was some strong opposition from the SNP,
Yes.
especially MPs Stephen Flynn and John Swinney.
Swinney in particular, he said that the only way a state visit would be justifiable
Okay.
was if Trump was absolutely full square with us on protecting Ukraine. So really emphasizing actions.
Yeah.
Or just symbolic gestures.
Very different from Starmer's approach, huh?
Very much so. It seems like Starmer is all about those practical steps and bridge building as a way to achieve peace.
Yeah, less about public condemnation and more about working behind the scenes.
Right. Trying to find that common ground.
It's a different style.
It is, yeah. Much more subtle.
So I guess even though there are these different opinions on how to deal with Trump,
Right.
it seems like everybody still agrees that the most important thing is supporting Ukraine.
Absolutely. I think that's something they all share.
Yeah, and finding that path to peace.
Yeah.
Okay, so how did Starmer actually approach this state visit offer?
Well, he presented Trump with a letter from the king offering a meeting in Scotland.
Oh, okay.
So remember, Trump owns a couple of golf courses in Scotland.
Right, right.
Because maybe that was to kind of,
Iron out the details.
hash out the details.
And then I guess also just a little bit of
a
a...
friendly gesture, maybe.
Yeah.
So in addition to that, Starmer also called both Trump and Zelensky
Okay.
after that clash at the White House,
Oh, wow.
just to kind of reiterate the UK's support for Ukraine.
So keeping those lines of communication open.
Yeah, it seems that's the strategy, right?
And building those relationships even if they disagree.
It's classic diplomacy, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
But of course, the big question is,
Yeah.
how effective can it be
Yeah.
when you're dealing with such a complex situation?
Yeah, and that's definitely something we're going to be looking at more as we continue this deep dive. So stay tuned.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about Trump's side of things a little bit.
Yeah.
But what about Zelensky?
Right.
I mean, he went into that meeting with Trump hoping to get some, tangible wins, right?
Yeah.
Like the article mentions this minerals deal.
Yeah.
That could have been huge for Ukraine's economy.
We've been a big boost for sure.
And of course, with the war going on,
Right.
he probably wanted some security guarantees too.
Oh, absolutely. Security guarantees from the U.S.
Right.
I mean, that would be a game changer for Ukraine.
Yeah.
Especially now.
But obviously it didn't really work out that way.
Not quite.
Instead, he gets, criticized by both Trump and his vice president, J.D. Vance,
Right.
for not being grateful enough
Yeah, I remember that.
for the U.S.
It
support.
was almost like a
Yeah.
power play.
It's kind of shocking.
It is, yeah.
You've got this leader of a country that's literally fighting for its survival, and they're telling him he should be more thankful.
Yeah.
It's,
Interesting dynamic for sure.
yeah. And Zelensky didn't just, sit there and take it either.
No, he pushed back
Yeah.
on those suggestions that he should be doing more to get a ceasefire with Putin.
Right. Right.
He even said that they were ready to sign that minerals deal.
Oh, okay.
But he really emphasized those security guarantees.
Right.
He was making it clear what he needed.
So basically he was standing his ground.
Yeah, I think so. He wasn't going to back down.
Even when he was getting pressure
Right.
from these, powerful allies.
It really shows what kind of leader he is.
Yeah.
I mean, he's determined to get what he thinks Ukraine needs to survive this.
And this whole situation, it really got other European leaders involved, too.
Of course.
Macron and Schultz, they both came out reaffirming their support for Ukraine.
Like a show of solidarity.
Yeah. It's like they were saying, we gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We're with you. Yep.
Even if
others aren't.
Right.
It's fascinating how this all plays out on the international stage.
Yeah, it is. It's like this.
Like a chess game.
Yeah,
With all these different players.
Everybody's making their moves, trying to figure out
right.
what's best for their own country.
And how it all fits into the bigger picture.
Yeah. So Starmer's over here trying to keep everybody happy. Yeah. He's got the S&P breathing down his neck.
Yeah.
And then he's also got to deal with,
Trump,
who's not exactly the easiest person to work with.
Right. It's a
tough job.
Yeah.
For sure.
So how are Starmer and Swinney's approaches different?
Well, I think Swinney's a lot more confrontational.
Okay.
He's very clear about, calling out what he sees as wrong.
Right.
He's not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
And Starmer's more like...
Starmer's playing the long game.
Okay.
He's trying to build those bridges.
Right.
Find that common ground. Quietly working things out. It's almost like two completely different
philosophies on how to do this whole international relations thing.
Yeah. One's about
direct confrontation.
And the other one's about
subtle influence. It's interesting to see them both play out.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember that, at the end of the day, this isn't just some abstract debate.
No, it's not.
We're talking about real people's lives here.
Right.
Ukraine is a country that's fighting for its survival.
Absolutely.
Millions of people
Yeah.
caught in the middle of this war.
It's a good reminder that these decisions
Yeah.
have real consequences.
So where does this leave the UK?
Well, it seems like they're in a tough spot.
Yeah.
Trying to balance all these different things.
Right.
Their commitment to their allies.
Yeah.
Their support for Ukraine.
And then also these internal political pressures.
Exactly.
It's a lot to juggle.
It is. And it shows how complicated diplomacy can be.
Yeah.
There are so many different factors at play.
You got to make these tough choices.
Right.
Weigh your priorities.
And find ways to cooperate even when you disagree.
Yeah, it's not easy.
Not at all. But it's essential,
Yeah.
for keeping the peace.
In a world that feels like it's
More and more volatile.
Yeah.
Every day.
It's messy.
Yeah.
Unpredictable.
Absolutely.
And it often means having to compromise.
Right.
But ultimately, it's crucial
Yeah, I think
for maintaining that stability
Yeah.
that the world needs.
that's why this whole situation is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
It really shows you how diplomacy works in the real world
Yeah.
with all its complexities.
There are rarely easy answers.
No, not really.
Every decision has these
ripple effects.
Yeah. It's really interesting to me how this whole thing kind of boils down to this question of
Yeah.
what price are we willing to pay for peace,
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Are we willing to kind of overlook certain things?
Right.
Actions, statements, ideologies, even.
Yeah. Just to maintain that stability. Keep things calm. Yeah, prevent conflict.
It's a tough question.
It is, yeah. It's one that's been around forever.
Yeah. And it's not just theoretical either.
No, not at all.
We see this playing out all the time.
Right.
In this case, it's Starmer, right?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out how to deal with Trump.
Who's made some pretty controversial statements
about
NATO, about Putin.
Yeah, and it's not just about managing these individual relationships either.
No, it's about that bigger picture.
Yeah.
The whole geopolitical landscape.
Right.
Alliances shifting, power dynamics changing.
It feels like the rules are constantly changing.
Yeah, it's a lot to keep up with.
It really does.
Yeah.
So how do we even approach diplomacy in this kind of world?
Well, I think we have to recognize that there's no easy answer.
Okay.
There's no one-size-fits-all solution.
Right.
Diplomacy is not static, it's dynamic.
It has to adapt.
Exactly.
So sometimes you need to be firm.
Yes.
Stand up for what you believe in, even if it means,
risking those relationships.
Yeah.
But then other times you need to be more subtle.
Right.
Build those bridges.
Find common ground.
Talk to people you don't necessarily agree with.
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance.
Exactly. Choosing the right approach for the situation.
And being ready to change if you need to.
Absolutely.
It's interesting because it seems like diplomacy is all about managing contradictions.
It is, isn't it?
You've got to cooperate and compete at the same time.
Right.
Build relationships, but protect your interests, uphold your values, but also acknowledge that the world is complicated.
It's a balancing act, for sure.
So it's like a dance.
Yeah.
A really delicate dance.
It takes a lot of skill and understanding.
Yeah.
Of history, culture, psychology.
But maybe most importantly, empathy.
Being able to see the world from someone else's perspective.
Yeah, to understand where they're coming from.
And finding that common ground.
So I guess at the end of this deep dive, we're left with more questions than answers.
Probably.
But maybe that's how it should be.
Right.
The world is complex.
Yeah.
There are no easy solutions.
No, not really.
But by talking about these things, exploring these ideas,
understanding what's at stake,
we can at least start to
navigate this crazy world.
Yeah, equip ourselves to deal with whatever comes next.
Exactly.
So we hope this deep dive has given you a better sense of what the UK is facing right now as they try to navigate this complex world.
It's a world that's changing all the time.
Full of contradictions.
Yeah, and we're finding peace.
Requires that delicate dance.
Of pragmatism, principles, and really understanding human nature.
Yeah. And on that note, that's our deep dive for today. Thanks for joining us.